This is what Ariely calls the fudge factor. It's the psychological buffer that lets us bend the rules while still believing we're ethical. We steal office supplies not because we're thieves, but because everyone does it. We lie on our taxes not because we're criminals, but because the system is unfair. We cheat just enough to feel okay. And it's not just about opportunity, it's about rationalization. In follow-up experiments, Ariely found that people were more likely to cheat if they saw someone else do it first. Especially if that person was like them, same age, same clothes, same background. Cheating isn't just a solo decision, it's a social contagion. We mirror what we see. We follow what we feel is normal. And that's terrifying. Because dishonesty spreads not through bad people, but through ordinary people lowering their standards bit by bit. It's death by 1,000 small justifications. But Ariely's work isn't about cynicism, it's about clarity. If you know how dishonesty creeps in, you can build walls around your integrity. You can create environments where honesty is easier, where the default is transparency, not temptation. Like asking for receipts, or having a second set of eyes, or making your goals visible to others. It's not about being paranoid, it's about being prepared. So what have we uncovered so far? That our decisions are fragile. That our sense of fairness is flawed. That we cheat in small ways. That we let emotion overtake reason. That we plan for tomorrow and betray ourselves today. But none of this means we're doomed. What Ariely is really telling us, beneath all the data, all the quirks, all the twisted choices, is that we can design better lives on purpose. That with the right structures, the right boundaries, the right awareness, we can take back control. We can outsmart our own irrationality. And that's the power of this book. It doesn't just show you how your mind works. It shows you how to rebuild it for better choices, stronger habits, more honest decisions, and ultimately, a better version of yourself. And in the next part, we'll dive into even more bizarre behaviors. Why free things mess with our logic, how expectations can warp reality, and why we sometimes value things more after we destroy them. Let's talk about something that feels harmless, even joyful. The word itself lights up our eyes. Free. A free trial. A free sample. A buy one get one free. It sounds like a gift, a bonus, a no-risk win. But Dan Ariely warns us, free is never just free. It's psychological dynamite. Imagine this, you're standing at a checkout counter. On one side, a premium chocolate truffle for 15 cents. On the other, a basic Hershey's Kiss for 1 cent. Most people, knowing the truffle is far superior, gladly pay the 15 cents. But then Ariely and his team tweak the offer. Now the truffle is 14 cents and the kiss is free. 1 cent difference, same price gap. But now, almost everyone picks the kiss. Why? Because our brains treat zero not like a number, but like magic. Zero risk. Zero guilt. Zero effort. The word free short-circuits our ability to weigh cost against value. We get so excited about getting something for nothing, we forget to ask whether we even want it. It's why people wait in hour-long lines for free ice cream they don't even like. Or hoard hotel shampoos they'll never use. Or download free apps that waste hours of their life. Free isn't about the thing, it's about the feeling. The rush of winning something. The illusion of beating the system. But the catch? We often end up losing more time, energy, clarity, just to chase that hit of, I got something extra. Even in economics, the free trap messes with our minds. Ariely tested this in a scenario involving Amazon gift cards. People were offered a $10 card for free, or a $20 card for $7. Now think logically, pay $7 and get $20, that's a better deal, right? But most people still chose the $10 card, because it was free. It didn't matter that the $20 card was worth more. Free felt safer. More exciting. The better deal vanished in the shadow of zero. This is the power of irrational pricing. The moment you see zero, your brain stops comparing and starts celebrating. But what happens when the thing we're offered for free is not just a product, but a decision, a choice that changes how we live? Here's where it gets deeper. When options are presented to us, our attention gravitates toward the one that seems easiest, the path of least resistance. And when one of those options is free, whether that's the free trial, the no money down deal, or even staying in the same situation, it becomes disproportionately attractive. But free isn't always better. Sometimes, it's the trap that keeps you from moving forward. Because when something is free, it's harder to walk away. You didn't invest anything, but now you're emotionally attached. That free subscription starts to feel essential. That freebie becomes part of your identity. And now, you're stuck. That's the silent cost of free. It limits our freedom. But Ariely doesn't just leave us with warnings. He gives us tools, starting with awareness. The next time you see free, pause. Ask yourself, what's the real cost? Not just in money but in time, attention, decision-making power. Is it something you'd want if it weren't free? If the answer is no, walk away. Now let's take a sharp turn into another illusion, ownership. You'd think we value things based on their objective quality. But Ariely's experiments reveal something deeper. We overvalue what we already own simply because it's ours. He tested this with students at a basketball game. Half the group received free tickets to a big match. The other half didn't. When asked how much they'd sell their ticket for, the owners asked for 10 times more than the non-owners were willing to pay. Nothing had changed, except that sense of mine. This is the endowment effect. The moment we possess something, we assign it more value, not because it changed but because we did. It's the same reason people refuse to throw out junk they never use. Or demand more money when selling their used car, even though it's scratched and worn. Or why creators overestimate the worth of their work, because it's part of them now. Ownership inflates ego. It blurs reality. And it doesn't stop with objects. We do this with ideas. We cling to our own plans, defend our own beliefs, dismiss new information that threatens what we've already committed to. The more effort we put into something, the more we defend it, not because it's right but because it's ours. Ariely calls this the IKEA effect. When you build your own furniture, even if it's crooked and wobbly, you love it more. Because you made it. You labored over it. You became emotionally invested. But here's the paradox. This emotional inflation can cloud your judgment. It makes it harder to see flaws, to pivot, to accept criticism. In relationships, it's why people stay in unhealthy situations. They've invested too much time. In business, it's why companies double down on failed products, because they poured in resources. In life, it's why we hold on to things, ideas, and people, not because they're good but because they're familiar. We're not just irrational with what we buy, we're irrational with what we believe. And that leads us to another powerful force: expectations. In a beautifully designed experiment, Ariely offered participants 2 identical beers. One had a hidden twist. It was laced with balsamic vinegar. When people didn't know about the vinegar, many preferred the taste. But when told in advance, they hated it even though it was the same drink. The only thing that changed? Their expectation. Our brains aren't blank slates. They're prediction machines. And once an expectation is set, good or bad, it shapes how we experience reality. We don't just taste, see, or hear, we anticipate those sensations. And that anticipation rewrites what we actually feel. This is why placebos work. Why people enjoy wine more when it's labeled expensive. Why a dish tastes better when it looks fancy. Or why a compliment lands harder when we believe it's sincere. Expectations are a lens, and that lens colors everything. Marketers know this. They craft packaging, prices, reviews, stories, all to guide your expectations. Because once your mind is primed to see something as premium or delicious or high value, it will. But this goes beyond marketing. Think about how it affects people. If you expect someone to be annoying, every word they say becomes irritating. If you expect a situation to be difficult, it becomes harder. If you expect to fail, you shrink yourself before you even begin. But flip it, and the world shifts. Expect confidence from yourself and you stand taller. Expect kindness from others and you'll notice it more. Expect growth and you'll move toward it, even when it's hard. This is where rationality becomes power, not cold logic but self-awareness. Ariely isn't saying we should suppress emotion, avoid free things, or throw away all we own. He's saying, know your triggers. Know your illusions. Know when your brain is playing tricks on you. Because that's how you take control, not by changing who you are but by understanding how you're wired. So, the next time you feel drawn to a freebie, stop. When you overvalue something just because it's yours, question it. And when your expectations pull you in a certain direction, ask if they're helping or holding you back. In the next chapter, we'll dive into the hidden influence of relativity, why we rarely choose things in isolation, how decoys manipulate your choices, and the surprising way we decide what something is worth. Picture yourself walking into an electronics store, ready to buy a new speaker. You see 2 models. One costs $50 and looks basic. The other is $100 and boasts rich sound quality and extra features. You're leaning toward the cheaper one, until the salesman shows you a third model. $120, slightly better than the $100 version but not by much. Now, suddenly, the $100 speaker seems like the perfect middle ground. Balanced, sensible, the smart choice. This is relativity in action. The $120 option wasn't there to be bought. It was there to make the $100 one look irresistible. Dan Ariely calls this the decoy effect, a trick of comparison that distorts how we evaluate value. And here's the catch. Our brains don't actually want absolute answers. We want relative ones. We don't ask, is this good? We ask, is this better than that? Our judgments are anchored in contrast, not in truth. It's why restaurants list outrageously expensive dishes, to make the next one down seem reasonable. It's why real estate agents show you a terrible first apartment, so the second one feels like a dream. And it's why we fall for marketing that's built not on merit, but on manipulation of context. We compare everything, salaries, relationships, lifestyles, not based on what we need but what others have. And that's where relativity becomes dangerous. Because there's no finish line in comparison. You get a raise but your colleague got more. You buy a nice car but your friend's is newer. You feel happy, until someone else looks happier. This is the trap of relative deprivation. It makes us feel like we're losing, even when we're winning. Because someone always seems to be doing better. Ariely tells a story of two brothers, both earning well. One is a doctor, the other a lawyer. The lawyer earns slightly more. The doctor is admired, respected, fulfilled, but still envies his brother's paycheck. Not because he needs more, but because he's stuck in comparison. This is where irrationality becomes suffering. When our metrics shift from internal fulfillment to external benchmarks, we become perpetually unsatisfied. But there's more. Relativity also influences how we make romantic decisions, career moves, even life choices. Ariely ran experiments where participants were asked to rate potential dating partners based on photos. When presented with two equally attractive options, participants struggled. But when a third, less attractive version of one of them was added, a decoy, the ratings shifted. The less attractive version made its twin look better. This isn't just about faces, it's about framing. If someone tells you a job pays $70,000, you might be excited. But if you hear your coworker got $75,000, that same offer now feels like a loss. Your reality hasn't changed, but your reference point has. This is the core of Ariely's message. We don't make decisions in a vacuum. We're influenced by context, framing, proximity, emotion. Every choice we think is rational has invisible strings attached. And yet, we still believe we're in control. Let's dig deeper into one of the most subtle forms of irrational behavior, self-control. We've all been there. Promising to eat healthier, save money, get more sleep. And then, life happens. The pizza smells too good. That one purchase becomes 3. The Netflix episode rolls right into the next one. What? Because our present self and our future self are not the same person. Present you wants pleasure. Future you wants results. And the problem is, present you holds the remote. Ariely illustrates this beautifully with a simple experiment. He let students choose snacks for the next week. Some picked in the moment. Others had to choose in advance. The ones who planned ahead chose more healthy snacks. The ones who picked in the moment? Junk food every time. Because delayed gratification only works when we plan for it. Our rational brain knows what's good for us long term, but our emotional brain wins in the moment. So how do we fight back? Ariely suggests something called pre-commitment devices. Tools that help us lock in good behavior before temptation strikes. It's the reason some people use apps that block social media during work hours, or freeze their credit cards in a block of ice, or set gym dates with friends they can't cancel on. We don't win with willpower, we win with strategy. Even Odysseus, in ancient myth, tied himself to the mast of his ship to resist the siren's call. He didn't try to resist in the moment. He prepared to win before the moment came. That's what rational living looks like. Not denying your impulses, but understanding them and designing around them. And that brings us to a powerful idea, the illusion of control. We love to believe we're in charge, that we call the shots. But Ariely's experiments reveal how much of our behavior is shaped by defaults, those little boxes that are already ticked for us. Take organ donation rates across countries. In some nations, participation is over 90%. In others, under 20%. Why the difference? Culture? Morality? No, it's the form. In high donation countries, the form requires you to opt out. In low donation countries, you have to opt in. That's it. A default setting changes life or death decisions. Because we often don't choose. We accept. We let the default guide us, not out of laziness but out of trust. We assume the default must be the best option. Someone must have thought this through. But that's a dangerous assumption. It's the same with retirement plans, privacy settings, even software updates. The more complex the choice, the more likely we are to stick with what's already selected. Ariely calls this decision paralysis. Too many choices overwhelm us. And when overwhelmed, we freeze. We choose nothing, or we choose whatever's already chosen for us. Marketers know this. Designers exploit it. Governments sometimes use it for good. But the reality remains, we're not as in control as we think. So what's the way out? Awareness. Not just of our choices, but of our environment. Of the subtle cues nudging us. Of the frames shaping our view. Of the defaults we never noticed. Because when you spot the puppet strings, you can start to cut them. Ariely isn't trying to turn us into emotionless logic machines. He's trying to make us more conscious, more curious, more willing to ask, wait, why did I just choose that? Because in a world full of manipulation, the most powerful thing you can do is pause. Reflect. Think twice. In the next part, we'll explore how dishonesty works, why even good people lie and cheat, how morality bends in our favor, and what it takes to stay truly honest in a world that tempts us at every turn. Now, let's step into a world most of us don't like to admit we know well, the world of dishonesty. But not the grand villainous kind. Not bank robbers or corporate fraudsters. We're talking about the small lies, the everyday cheats, the little bends in the rules that most people justify and repeat. Dan Ariely dives into this uncomfortable territory with one burning question. Why do honest people sometimes cheat? It turns out the answer isn't what you'd expect. We imagine dishonesty as a simple equation. Temptation versus conscience. But Ariely's research shows it's far more nuanced. It's not about calculating risk and reward. It's about how we see ourselves. In one of his experiments, participants were given math problems to solve, and the more they solved, the more money they earned. But here's the twist. Some participants were allowed to grade their own sheets and shred them afterward, meaning they could lie about their score without being caught. And they did. But not in a greedy, over-the-top way. Most people cheated just a little. Enough to get more money, but not so much that they'd feel like bad people. They found a sweet spot, where they could lie and still see themselves as moral. This is the real driver of dishonesty. Not profit. Not risk. But self-image. We want to benefit, without feeling like we're betraying who we are. So we rewrite the story. We rationalize. I was just rounding up. Everyone else does it. It's not really hurting anyone. These mental gymnastics are what Ariely calls fudge factors. The justifications that make dishonesty feel okay. And what increases those fudge factors? Distance. If we cheat with money in hand, we feel guilt. But if we cheat by lying on a form, it doesn't feel like stealing. That's why people are more likely to pocket office supplies than cash. Pens aren't money. But 100 pens? That's a different story. The further we are from the actual harm, the easier it is to cheat. It gets worse. When we see others cheat and get away with it, we're more likely to do it ourselves. Especially if they're part of our in-group. In one study, if a student wearing a sweatshirt from the same university cheated openly, others followed suit. But if the cheater wore a rival school's sweatshirt, the rest stayed honest. Cheating is contagious, but only when it feels like our people are doing it. Morality bends under the weight of belonging. And what about reminders of ethics? Do they help? Surprisingly, yes. In another experiment, participants were asked to recall the 10 commandments before taking the test. Even if they couldn't remember all 10, just the act of trying dramatically reduced cheating. Why? Because it triggered their moral compass, just enough to bring them back in line. It didn't take fear. It took reflection. But here's the scariest part. The smarter we are, the better we are at rationalizing. High IQ participants didn't necessarily cheat more, but when they did, they were far better at justifying it. They constructed more elaborate stories, stronger excuses, more convincing inner narratives. In other words, intelligence doesn't protect you from dishonesty, it just makes you better at lying to yourself. Now think about your own life. Ever call in sick when you weren't? Ever download something you didn't pay for? Ever fudge a number on a form just a little? You're not alone. And Ariely isn't judging. He's showing us that dishonesty isn't a rare character flaw, it's a common, deeply human behavior. Driven not by malice, but by the quiet tug-of-war between gain and guilt. But if we know this, can we protect ourselves? Yes. And the secret is transparency, accountability, and reducing the fudge factors. When people sign an honesty pledge before filling out a form, cheating drops. When receipts are detailed and payments are tracked, dishonesty shrinks. When we're made to feel seen, not punished, just noticed, our better selves step forward. But the ultimate defense is awareness. Knowing that your brain will try to protect your self-image by bending the truth, gives you power. You can interrupt it. You can ask, am I being honest, or just telling a convenient story? Because deep down we all want to see ourselves as good people. And when dishonesty threatens that self-image, we don't just cheat the system, we cheat ourselves. But irrationality doesn't end with dishonesty. There's a deeply unsettling behavior most of us fall into without even realizing it, the high price of ownership. You've seen it in action. You put your old sofa up for sale online. You paid $400 for it 2 years ago, and now you ask for $350. But no one bites. You're insulted. You think, they don't get how great this is. This is the endowment effect. Once we own something, we overvalue it. Not just a little. Often by 50% or more. Our attachment inflates the worth, not because it's truly more valuable but because it's ours. Ariely proved this with a simple experiment. He gave students Duke University basketball tickets, then asked how much they'd sell them for. The students who didn't get tickets were willing to pay around $170. But those who got them? They wouldn't sell for less than $2,400. Same tickets. Same event. But once it's yours, it's priceless. Ownership turns objects into part of your identity. And it goes beyond things. Ideas. Projects. Opinions. Once you've invested time, effort, or belief into something, you resist letting it go, even if it's wrong. Even if it's failing. This is why people double down on bad investments, cling to outdated views, or stay in unfulfilling relationships. Because walking away feels like losing part of themselves. This is the sunk cost fallacy. It whispers, you've already spent so much, you can't quit now. But the truth is, past costs are gone. What matters is whether continuing brings future value. But our brains don't see it that way. We want to believe our investments were smart. That our decisions were justified. So we keep digging, hoping we'll eventually strike gold, even if we're in the wrong hole. Rational thinking would say, cut your losses. But irrational loyalty says, don't let it all be for nothing. So how do we escape this trap? By shifting focus from the past to the future. Ask, if I didn't already own this, would I buy it today? If I hadn't already started this project, would I choose to do it now? These are clarity questions. They pierce through emotional bias and bring decisions back to logic. And perhaps the hardest place to apply them is in relationships. Because ending something, whether it's a career, a friendship, a marriage, can feel like failure, like betrayal. But sometimes the most rational act is letting go. Not because it wasn't valuable, but because its value has changed. In the final chapters of Ariely's journey, we explore how expectations shape reality, how pricing distorts experience, and how even our pleasure is vulnerable to irrational thinking.